Hello. I should be quiet. Hello, everybody.
Hello?
Today is your fourth episode of Talk Speed Up. I am Ninja, and I'll be joined by Kbot, Alecat, and Shockwave today. I'm not going to be speaking at like 500 decibels today. I have to be quiet because it is 1 a.m. But everyone else will be able to be a good volume for once. So yeah, let's just go around, just small current introduction, then we can move on to other stuff.
Yes, hello. It is your ASMR version of Talk Speed Up this time around. My name is Kbot.
Okay.
Shirt today, by the way. Glass is always full. Just so y'all know. That's about it because I got nothing creative. So yeah, I don't know which one of the two of you wants to go.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Alecat. I'm a TO for the Oceanic region. Been around since sort of the start of the scene here.
Morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name's Shockwave, and 2019 Australasian Open Champion player, competitive player, the Solstice Splatoon, also known as Justice, and formerly known as Lime Soda at the World Champs.
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good quick rundown. I think all right, so something I'm gonna do in this introduction compared to normal, where I'd normally just move on to a new topic, but this time, as suggested by Shockwave, I thought it was a very nice idea. I'm gonna ask Alecat and Shockwave to just kind of go through kind of like the history as a player or individual, from the kind of start to beginning. So it could be from like 2016, 2017, whenever they started. So I would go with Alecat first because it's in order. There's no particular thing. So if you just want to like kind of give us your like TLDR history of like you as a player, staff member, person.
Yeah, so got into Splatoon after seeing the E3 trailer and just being like, oh yeah, got to play that because used to play TF2, which I guess it sort of scratches some of the very superficial same itches as Splatoon, like in terms of very stylized gameplay. For me, playing shooters often would give me motion sickness. So having things with bold colors, distinct shapes really helps. So looking at TF2 and being like, well, I'm not really doing much PC gaming now, seeing Splatoon as an opportunity to be, I love Nintendo. So we went and played the Splatoon demo at that year's PAX Oz, and we lined up over and over and over to play the demo. It was like beta version 2, Urchin Underpass. Everyone had splatter shots with Inksuka and splat bombs, and everyone was painting the walls. We didn't know what we were doing, but yep, that was it. Hooked from that moment. I guess in terms of becoming a TO, it intertwines with the Oceanic history because I don't know if we're going to do a segment on that later, but basically started the first tournaments here and sort of unexpectedly went from being a tournament series to a community.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty nice. As you said, we're going to be talking more about Oceanic later. A massive spoilers, who would have known? We're going to talk about Oceanic with the Oceanic
We're talking
episode.
about the Australia-New Zealand region.
Who would have known?
Whoa,
but yeah,
who would have thought?
Yeah, I think we can at least a lot of us can relate to the E3 trailer. That was it was a good trailer. I was pretty hyped on that moment on. But yeah, Shockwave, if you wanna just when did you start playing? When did you get into the game?
Well, I kind of, being a 13, 14-year-old, I was back a few years ago. I kind of saw that ad of "You're a kid, you're a squid." Wasn't too big of a fan. I used to mostly play NBA, Call of Duty, that kind of stuff. So it didn't look like my thing. But then later in the year, I kind of ended up buying a Wii U, bought Mario Kart, and a few other games, and Splatoon kind of just got chucked in there. Played about 10 hours and then kind of left it. Wasn't enjoying it that much until the Nintendo Switch got announced October 2016. Everything got announced, Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart, all that, and then I ended up just buying it again and on love with it ever since. In terms of playing tournaments competitively, I just saw a Facebook event which ended up being Ocean Inc. I went with my ROL, like in real life friend, who actually introduced me and back on the Wii U and on the Switch. We ended up going together. He just got put on a pickup team, and then someone who was on that pickup team was actually in the Ocean Inc. Squids Discord. And from there, it kind of just led to joining team after team.
I mean, that's pretty interesting. So are you saying you didn't play Splatoon 1 like much or competitively at all? Like that's
pretty much like 10 hours just turf war.
you have to realize that you are among the boomers in
Yeah.
terms of competitive Splatoon. Okay,
Yeah.
like you are. It doesn't
Baby
feel like it
I know.
because you're still
Yeah.
young.
I know.
But in terms of Splatoon, like there's, I would actually be curious to know the percentage of people in this community that have been around since the very beginning, because it's probably a lot lower than you would anticipate.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Also,
Sorry, yeah.
sorry, I've just got a
Yeah.
quick one. Happy birthday, Shock, for yesterday.
Oh yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Ah,
Thank you.
yes.
For Kbot, it's still your birthday technically, so Kbot
Yeah,
can still
true.
celebrate
Very
it.
true.
Oh, it's the birthday stream.
There you
Yeah,
go.
it's the birthday stream for everyone
Oh.
American right now.
Happy
so
birthday.
yeah, happy birthday,
Yeah.
Shock, for yesterday. Very
Thank
true.
you. Thank you.
Let's be honest, I find it really impressive and interesting. A lot of people got into competitive in this game and still make it so far. Like most of the, you're catching up with people that have been playing this game for 5 years long. That in itself, I normally end up finding very impressive because I mean, I've been playing 5 years and I get rolled and everything. So the fact that you've been playing for like 3 and yeah, that's I've always found that very impressive. But I think that's pretty nice. It's pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, just to add on that, it seems like a lot of people in Australia and New Zealand often like just kind of jumped in at Splatoon 2. Like there's a big handful of people because of how small the community was back in Splatoon 1. A lot of people kind of jumped at the opportunity when they finally saw like the World Championships in 2017 or 18, for example, and they kind of just joined in from there.
And I have a feeling that you were able. I have a feeling we'll probably get into this more, but the LAN presence in Australia, New Zealand seems like it's a lot more of one than it is like anywhere else really regionally. I mean, maybe in Japan, but who knows what's going on in Japan. But otherwise, I mean, like if you look at the English-speaking regions, I suppose, then I feel like the LAN presence is something big over there, and that probably helped with the Nintendo Switch as opposed to looking around giant Wii U's everywhere. So maybe Alecat can touch on that later.
Oh yeah, that was good times.
It was not.
Yeah.
Actually, I never actually had to do it because I was never actually a LAN organizer while we were still on Splatoon 1, and am I glad that I am not.
I think that. Sorry, yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, the last thing I was going to note on something very small, just anecdote, tidbit, funny thing from a Splatoon. The only Splatoon 1 LAN I went to, someone teleported on my screen in a Splatoon 1 LAN. So the fact, because there's no actual LAN, you're just all connecting to the same internet. Someone actually lagged in my LAN game, and luckily that was the only instance. It was pretty much lag-free the entire time. There was just one instance where someone just had a blip and a dynamo just teleported, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm playing on LAN right now." So yeah.
The actual interesting thing about LAN mode is, I don't know how it is for Splatoon 2, but on Splatoon 1, we did some testing. The game attempts to route peer-to-peer, as we all know, and that means that if you are on the same network and you yank the internet cable, your consoles are still on the same network, so they send the traffic to each other. So we were able to play with squids moving around up until it pings the server about 30 seconds later. So unfortunately, it wasn't viable for use, for actual use in LAN play, but it was interesting. The traffic didn't actually get sent away and then come back. So I don't know what happened to your LAN. Maybe the routing was just a bit dodgy.
Either the routing was dodgy, or like my 14-year-old brain just saw something wrong. I have no idea. But I swear I saw a dynamo teleport on LAN. I'm just gonna tell that story forever.
All right.
Well, either way, that was a pretty fun intro. But
yeah.
I think before we move on to a lot of the Oceanic stuff, we're just gonna have like a quick kind of recap of like a very short recap of the last couple of weeks, like all of the tournaments that happened in any region. So I think if we go all the way back, the latest, like the furthest back tournament that happened was in the War.
That might be right.
Yeah.
Because that was probably a Sunday after we did the Friday episode, right? Yeah.
I'm gonna say Shockwave specifically, because I don't think Alecat you played. Did you play? Did you stay up and play that one, or was that?
I was actually thinking of making a +2 pickup, and then it kind of came to that time, and I think the day before I might have played in an early tournament, like 8 o'clock or something. Okay. I think it might have been, I can't quite remember, but not being tired that night, and I decided to not go through with that in the end.
That's fair. But Kbot, I know that you watched a lot of it. You did like an analysis stream and everything, right? So you definitely saw a lot of perspective from In the War and Turf War competitively in general. I personally I played in it, but I don't know. I was supposed to play in a pickup with people and try hard, and I did so bad in the scrims, I said, I don't want to throw, find someone else. I'm going to play in a pickup for fun with Power and Risha instead. And we ended up doing well.
Yeah, I was about to say, didn't you guys like actually do well?
we went like 3-2 with like Gray, Rob, Brian, and who was the fourth? But it was a strong pickup, and we went
Bran.
3-2. Bran, yeah.
Bran was
And
the fourth.
I literally was only playing with Power and Power, Ritter, and Taylor because I was like, I don't want to play in this tryhard pickup, guys. I'm sorry, I'm doing so bad. I just want to have fun, and we did do bad. So you know what? I'll take it. But I mean, apart from our little pickup, I think the winners were. Was there a Japanese team that entered, or was it Dream that?
No,
it was Dream.
It was Dream. It was Dream that entered. It was .q, Zero, Terra, and Tyson, I believe, is how you say his name. Don't quote me on that. But Tyson is primarily a Kensa Junior main.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was pulled out in one of the games.
I think he was kind of primarily known as like this crazy 2900 junior. He played in another Western tournament.
Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, Turf War is Turf War. I still don't think really much of anyone has a firm, like 100% lock understanding of how to play it, like in a true competitive setting. Obviously, Dream was the ones I think that understood how to play it the cleanest, and so I think that's resulted. By the way, I was able to spectate quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals on Overhead View. That is, I actually just uploaded those on my YouTube channel yesterday. So if you want to go search for that, and you want to subscribe, shameless promo because it's my podcast too. DJ, you can't take all the shameless plugs here. But yeah, those are there if you want to go watch them. I mean, they were interesting enough. I still don't foresee Turf War being a staple in competitive Splatoon anytime soon, but perhaps it's something in a nice change of pace every once in a while that people might want to enjoy. The other thing that I will say, though, is that Turf War isn't really going to build up I don't think it's going to build up much of a following, and I think a large part of the reason why so many high-level people came out was literally just because it was the Sendo tournament of the month. So, I mean, realistically, that was probably one of the only reasons why a lot of people came out for it. And sure, Turf War, fun, yippee, but I don't see it catching on. I don't see it being a normal. I imagine we're going to go back to zones for this month. Obviously, I don't really know for sure, but yeah, that's kind of my take on it. And kind of my read is that we still don't understand how to play it. So, and obviously Dream understood how to play it the best, but there were very few challengers in their path.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys think about Turf War. I know that Shockwave, you probably have a good amount of Turf War experience since you will have had to play it in the Worlds. So I'm assuming you scrimmed a bit of Turf War in the past. You probably have some experience with it. I don't know what your thoughts on the mode are. If you enjoy it, you hate it, you love it, you think it's okay, but...
Yeah, I did scrim it a little bit before going to Worlds. I know Alliance Rogue, I talked to Soren at one point, and he kind of said we didn't even bother with that. We're just practicing for the semi-finals kind of maps. But I don't know if you guys heard about the Firetail League. You had to do like a play-for-service game where you played Turf War, and they actually picked some of the good shifty station maps like you guys would have done for one of the NA Opens when it was like a Turf War only one. And I actually found some of those maps quite enjoyable, some of those shifty stations, and I'm kind of on the fence pretty much because it's like it only comes down to the last 30 seconds where in the ranked mode it's like a continuous 5 minutes of like defense offense kind of thing like we'd see in any other normal sport. So I'm kind of on the fence, and then obviously you have Koshian that's basically just Turf War, and you see how they play it, and this is like, wow, watching this for like a casual or even competitive watching it, how they play it, the deep understanding of it is like really amazing. So I'm kind of sitting on the fence between like it can be pushed to like a really high level, and it's kind of just like the last 30 seconds and not like a full game 5 minutes endurance.
Yeah,
what I will say though, I mean, on the topic of like Turf War in general, I think that it's I want to challenge the notion that the ranked modes are entirely over like the span of 5 minutes. Because sure, while true, like there's always the potential for a comeback, and you're never necessarily out of the game. Those leads can happen at any point in time. It's really only going to take like a string of about a minute of just being better than your opponent, and if you line that string up for that minute of time, you win the game. So like you don't need to be like strong for the entire game. Now, what I will say about Turf War though is you don't get to choose when your 30 seconds of glory is going to be. That 30 seconds of glory always comes when that clock hits about the 20-second mark. And then it's like, all right, this is the make or break moment of the game. So, like, bear that in mind too, right? Is that
Yeah.
Splatoon, as we look at it, is often about. I keep going back to this quote as I was doing some prep for the previous Inkstorm. I was going back and watching some old VODs, and I heard Hitzel say this during Inkstorm 4. Splatoon is not about the sum of your performances; it's about your single best performance within the game. And that's most times what wins you the game. I think Turf War is an even more extreme example of that from what we're normally used to seeing. And that's part of the reason why, like, a lot of people aren't really much of a fan of it, because again, you don't get to choose when that time is. It is very much coming in on a very specific moment in the game.
I think in terms of turf and the last 30 seconds mattering, I think it might have been 2 or 1 single match at the 2018 Oz Finals where it was Yenar versus Scarface. And I remember one where I think Yenar got wiped in the last 30 seconds and they still won because Scarface could not roll out to take advantage of that wipe. So, like, they should have had free reign or something like that. Or I think a player DC'd, so they were playing 3v4. Yes, a player DC'd in LAN.
It happens.
Love
It happens.
Love that.
Yeah. And there
Yeah,
was,
I'm
I
pretty sure
think,
they DC'd and still won the match on
yeah,
Gobi, I
yeah.
think.
There were a couple. Gabe will definitely reply in the chat to answer this one. But just there was, when you have a team that understands turf war better than the other team, they understand which areas of the map are better to control or whatever turf that you got earlier. It actually sort of challenged my notion that, you know, it is just the last 30 seconds that matter. Because if you cannot coordinate with your team to capitalize, then just because you wiped them doesn't mean you win.
Very
Yeah.
true.
I
It
think.
still takes coordination.
Sorry, I was going to say one last note on the last 30 seconds thing as well. I think a big thing I noticed from watching Koshin, because I watched pretty much all of the most recent Koshin tournament, is the way the Japanese players play, is they understand the last 30 seconds is by far the most important part. I see some of them just not even trying to play the game or push until the last 30 seconds. Like, they'll take the first team fight, and then they'll lose it. And then they'll sit on their side of the map for 2 minutes, making sure they have 4 specials at the end of the game, just throwing bombs into mid, seeing if they get a random pick. And if they don't get the random pick, they use 4 specials in the last 30 seconds. So I think that's something the Western teams need to think about. Yeah, maybe it's boring, maybe you like a lot more fights, but at the end of the day, these Japanese teams are winning because they're setting themselves up to have the best 30 seconds possible. Like, you can play with the knowledge that the last 30 seconds is the most important, so you want to put yourself in the position to have the best last 30 seconds you can have.
I think that's a lot of thing that, like, as players we get fidgety about, right?
Yeah.
Because like you even in, say, a ranked game where, like, you have the lead and you have to hold that lead, players, like, that tilts you. Like, you're ahead, so you're going to play differently. Like, same thing, I need to hold this turf up until 2 minutes 30, so that affects how you think about the game.
On
So.
that note, Matt, I wonder, and I'd like to hear from Shockwave and Ninja, I think you might have a little bit of experience here too. Would competitively scrimming turf war help your team coordination a little bit more, especially when we're talking about that last fight when it's like all on the line? I feel like there's a chance that just scrimming turf war for a little bit, like taking 1 scrim, taking 2 scrims against an opponent that's pretty similar to you, if you swap back and forth on who has control of mid, like every game, right? It's staged for the first minute and a half or whatever, where like there's going to be one team that has control of mid, and like the other team is playing a little bit. I mean, like you're not faking the game, but then it comes down to like the last 30 seconds, last 20 seconds. I wonder if that would be a good exercise in team coordination as you're thinking about scrimming and thinking about ways to get a little bit better, to be in some of those more high pressure situations, I guess. That's just kind of a thought that just came to my head, but I'd be curious to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to like discipline. Obviously, we're talking about kind of defense, holding your ground. Scrimming turf, I can definitely see that, especially playing it through the Australasian Open Cup kind of thing. It was all about discipline, just holding your ground, and I think that can even be seen through some of the ranked modes. Like if the team's coming at you with a push, you just need to hold your ground, take the higher ground, just throw your bombs, whatever, get specials and all that. I think scrimming turf war could definitely be something to just build up that kind of discipline in your mind to saying, okay, we have the lead, we don't need to push forward, we can hold the lead, just say it's like 20, and let them come at you and kind of feed up you, let them waste specials early kind of thing like that.
Yeah. I want to note like on what Kbot said, I think that's a really interesting concept actually. Like especially what you were saying about before, the idea of like staging a scrim to be in a specific way so you can play it out in a specific way. I remember hearing about that ages ago on an Overwatch podcast actually, because there was a coach that would they would request the other team, can we try and like push this specific one point of the map like 5 times against you? Like just over and over, and then reset, try the first fight again, reset. Staging scrims to like try and work out a specific thing can really help and transfer over to other things. So I think that's a really interesting concept for sure. I don't know how teams would feel about it. There's a lot of very impatient players in Splatoon that just want to run forwards and get kills, so they might not like that idea, but
on the alternative,
maybe it'll be best for them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like if you actually treat it seriously, maybe it would actually teach you a little bit more patience, right?
For sure.
I get it. You want to have fun.
Actually,
I get it. You want to dive in and get kills on everybody. But let's take a step back for a moment. Like sometimes patience is key in this game, and it's about working around your team, and it's about building up that synergy to push back in to push the objective even further. So maybe that'd be a good practice. I don't know. Maybe it's a thought experiment and some food for thought for the rest of anyone listening to this right now. Maybe try it. Maybe don't try it. I don't know. Maybe you try it and then you at me on Twitter, you say I'm crazy. That's fine too. I don't actually play the game. I'm not actually a coach, so you say what you want.
Yeah.
I think it's with any practice, like you just have to define what you want to get out of it, right? Because like if we just say we want a scrim turf war, like that's saying the means of learning. That's not actually saying the outcome. So yeah. So define what you want to learn from scrimming turf war and then go from there.
All right. I think aside from In the War, as we move past that, were there any other big tournaments we can talk about? There was a couple of the Sink and Swims happened that were like NA focused tournaments.
And the testing grounds as well. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Sink or Swim happened not this past Wednesday, but last Wednesday. They took a break this Wednesday. I forget who won that one last Wednesday. I think it was an FT win pickup.
Yeah, which I wanted to.
I don't think there was anything surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not actually dead, or Shaq is dead, but no one else is.
Yep.
And they're still playing together, so deal with it, everyone. You still got your top team in North America sitting around.
I wanted to say that, like, FT Win have played like 5 tournaments since they disbanded, like...
Yeah.
They didn't actually disband. Shaq just thought they were disbanding, and the rest of the players are still playing the game because... Come on, like, really? You really thought Kyo was going to take a break? No, you're wrong. Region Cup, Gabe, was actually a tournament that happened last weekend.
Yeah.
Kind of forgot about that and honestly didn't pay that close attention to it. Did anyone else here?
I saw bits of it. I think it was the Japan versus Japan finals. 2 Japanese teams actually entered.
As expected.
I think it was an FT Win pickup and Starburst that came close though. There was apparently, I think the team that won was like an XP 3000 team pretty much, so like super team. But apparently they came close with Starburst. The other team was like using bubble blower strats, and they lost to the XP 3000 team. They kind of swept the FT Win pickup, and FT Win's perspective was like they think they could have gone closer with the XP 3000 team because they were just playing more standard Splatoon, whereas they don't know how to deal with bubble blower stuff. Very little Western teams are scrimming with like these like bubble blower comps, bubble blower comps. There's not many players that have a good use of the special, whereas Japan have some like teams or players like Tyson that are just crazy at just blowing everyone up with bubbles and killing you all.
Then obviously I didn't pay attention to Region Cup, but that explains why I saw bubble blowers, a more amount of bubble blowers than 0 yesterday when I was casting testing grounds. I was like, where is this coming from? Like, everyone's playing Foil Squeezer now. Like, where did this come from? Where were you guys? Somewhere soldiers shaking a stick and saying, I told you so.
I mean... I think Bubbles is a special that if you gave like a splatter shot, splat bombs plus Bubbles, it could be like the best weapon in the game. It's just not on anything crazy. Squeeze is a decent main weapon, but it's not like crazy enough to abuse Bubbles, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any other major crazy, unless you guys had anything you wanted to mention on the other tournaments, or should we move on to the OCE stuff?
Nothing really major. I believe, or Testing Grounds last night was won by Enlightenment. They came back. They did a thing. Earlier today was Saturday Morning Coffee. That featured an In Control versus Azure, Azure plus Dura. And In Control ended up 3-0ing that one. In grants to take that. Other than that, not much. Pretty standard stuff on the whole. Nothing super surprising in my perspective. Was there anything that happened in Australian
Yeah.
Splatoon very quickly in the past like 2 weeks?
It's kind of just our local Oceaning series. Other than that, kind of not too many tournaments kind of floating around right now. I think Div 2 got decided their winner, Penguins of Greenland. I think that, and then the week before, Solstice won their match against Sturgeon, who took out Div 1.
I just realised Penguins
Yeah,
of Greenland.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah, for a bit of context, so we have our local league, similar, I guess, to Looty. We have currently 4 divisions. I think we had at one point up to 7 divisions, but the bottom division, everyone was like good enough in there that we just clumped them together. And yeah, it's actually pretty active. The Oceanic spread, we accept teams from all the way out in, I think we have players. What's the most west?
Korea?
Maybe Korea, yeah. I think that might be the
Yeah.
furthest west. And then we got Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, Indonesia, Brunei. I'm going to forget something. But yeah, basically we cover a large
You guys cover a lot more
region.
than just Australia.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
basically the whole of the story.
Yeah.
All right. So either way, now we are going to be moving on. I guess probably talking about more Oceanic because we're going to talk about in general like OCE Splatoon history. So it can be like Oceanic. It could be a lot of your land stuff. Just kind of the history, the formation, everything with Oceanic Splatoon. I feel like Alicat's going to be a big carry on this one because you've
I'm
been
going to be talking,
yeah.
I'm going to be talking a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Oceanic started, it was going to be, actually I was working on a LAN before I started Oceanic. So we ran the first LAN a week before Squidstorm, I think. So I think Australia may actually have run the first Splatoon 1 LAN.
Ooh.
And that was as a convention style tournament. So the expectation for that was they're not necessarily competitive players. They're people who want to do something at a convention. And not knowing how broad the fan base was for this, for a lot of our LANs and some events, we sort of catered our the style of event was towards, well, hey, you like Splatoon, come play it. Not necessarily you want to be competitive in Splatoon. And I've been running tournaments and stuff with this particular event, my local anime con, since 2007, and been part of running Smash tournaments and all that. So I convinced them to get another 8 Wii U's. So we had 16 Wii U's, and then I had to unlock all the weapons on them. So this is the origin story of how I became a junior main. And a few friends helped out as well. We had to get 16 Wii U's up to level 30, complete Octo Valley in all of them. We had to, and then like maybe with a month left to go, Splat Hacks became more accessible, and I'm like,
Yeah. So wait, just a quick
okay.
clarification. You actually just like sat down to people and unlocked like 16 Wii U's up to level 30 on Splatoon. That's pretty
Yes.
that's crazy.
Yes.
That is crazy.
People do.
I would have clocked up probably, I don't know, a lot of hours on that. There are videos of me playing 2 Wii U's at the same time, because in B rank tower control and Rainmaker, it's totally feasible.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
And that was the best way to get money. If you can win, you get So we did that. While I was planning that event, I saw quite frequently, we hang around the Splatoon subreddit, there was a poster by the name of AM Rose, and they were often bemoaning that there are no tournaments on at good times for Australians, because all the tournaments are catered towards the Europe-America overlap, which is 2 a.m. for us. So we decided, I ended up on a team with Rose, and they and some of the other members were the impetus to be like, well, can we run an event online? And we called it Oceanic Offensive. Once off, we're going to run this little tournament. I think there were 28 teams, and despite the fact that we were trying to cater to Aussie teams, only 4 of those were Australian. But we still considered that a success, because that went on to become the home base of Australian Splatoon. So we were expecting to just run one tournament or like a tournament series. But what we've ended up with is like there is one sort of centralized place where people in our region go to chat. Like I think, say for American Splatoon, you're all spread out, or like you hang out in Academy or something. But that's we would hang out in Oceanic and complain about our bad internet and like things that Aussies, care about, and how New Zealand is better than us, but we have a deep inferiority complex. So, just as people, not as Splatoon players, but as like New Zealanders are just better people than us. So yeah, we ran Oceanic Offensive. We alternated like local events, trying to foster our local scene alongside the broader global ones to try and connect people with the global community. But we sort of petered out after a little while because, as I hinted at many times before, Australian internet is not great. So back in Splatoon 1, I don't know if you guys remember, but speed tests became a thing.
Oh,
yes.
Don't get me started.
There were literally like huge parts of our scene, because Australia's internet, we were on ADSL. We literally couldn't, like, there were players who could not pass speed tests because like they were not capable of getting internet fast enough. And because we're so far away, the ping means that you get you get called out for a speed test when like, if you had internet that bad but you were only 50 milliseconds away from the other player, they wouldn't call you out. But because we're 300 milliseconds away, it's like, well, they're teleporting, so their internet must be bad. Even locally, though, we did have problems because we're a large region. From like even Australia, Western Australia to New Zealand is a large gap, and so yeah, there were some challenges there. And yeah, obviously the time zone issue was big for us. So we sort of started what would become like that time slot, which was a Friday afternoon for America, and Saturday morning for us. I think Black and Spoon saw that, oh, hey, this time slot actually works doing an evening tournament. So I will take credit for inspiring them to.
Well, okay.
Or rather, I think,
originally they were on Thursdays.
And then they moved. Sure, yeah. But I think Black, when he wants to suck up to me, and I don't know why he would want to suck up to me, says that that's the reason why. Well, like that's something they figured it was viable because they saw people actually signing up for evening tournaments.
Now I know who to blame as 15-year-old me, because I remember being 15-year-old me, a little British boy at home. I'd be like, why is there these massive big prize money tournaments that Europeans can't enter? And I'd go on Twitter like, Kraken Paradise would smash you kids, but they can't enter because they're sleeping. What is this? So now I know who to tell 15-year-old me to have a go at. That's
But yeah, broadly speaking, that was the entire experience of Australian Splatoon players, and is quite a bit now, which we'll probably get into. All the big tournaments happen for us. You got to wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. And in the early days of the scene, this actually meant that our community skewed older in age. So we were, a lot of people who are uni or older. I think at one point we had 5 PhD candidates active. Like just as a reflection of what stage of life they were in, it was one of the big shocks actually moving from Splatoon 1 to 2 was like, oh, we've got a whole younger audience that we're catering to as well. But yeah, LANs were pretty big in early. Like I'd say a lot of our early growth was grown off LANs, and so we had that first convention LAN in Adelaide, and that's my city. It's not a big city. I think we got like 8 teams for it, just of convention people who just, I like Splatoon, I want to try it out. Or a few. So, I mean, for all that effort of 16 we use, I'm not unhappy with that.
Yeah.
And we used those same we used when they ran the first Sydney LAN. We flew over with a few of those with the equipment and stuff. But for the Sydney LAN, they also had people allowed to bring their own consoles. So that was started by Bicky Bird and Hero, or Superhero. And they ran their first one in October 2016. And one of the cool things about that LAN was Eric from EGTV was in Australia he was doing like half a year or something here. So he actually turned up to that and he did commentary and it was really awesome.
I actually didn't know that. That's really cool.
So,
I remember seeing that. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yep, long time ago.
Or it feels like a long time ago.
Yeah, and like that's one of the cool things about Splatoon in general is that we actually have really good community communication across, the whole global community. Like, Eric was familiar with us. Like, EGTV always gave us shout outs. Like, there was no reason why anyone in America watching a LAN would actually end up at one of our events. But like AC and Eric would be like, oh yeah, and Oceanic have an event this weekend or whatever. So that's something that we really appreciated. And we try and pay that forward as well. So try and make sure that other people running events, we're talking about what they're doing and being hype about it.
Yeah, it's a global community. It really is. We're all around the globe, and we would otherwise be small enough to the point where like we might as well just be global because cast the net wide, as they say. But yeah, no, I mean, and even still, like a lot of the stuff you do isn't even a terrible time if you're just looking to tune in for a little bit, right? Like. Even for like some of the Firetail League broadcasts that you guys were running on, the Saturday mornings, that's the Friday night time slot for us over here. It's like I'm going. I'm about ready to settle into bed.
Savvy. And you guys just need to interview them because they deserve their own. Their segment. Yeah.
Checkers and Rambo are great. I loved the Firetail League. I forgot which time slot was in for me, but I remember always watching Firetail League. It was good entertainment. It was good quality. But I think so. That's kind of like the general like history, the starting of OCE. But what about like moving towards like the Oceanic League and like the tournament, like the tournaments, the Oceanic League? Like where did that kind of come from? Like how's it formed? Where were like the early results and stuff like that from?
Yeah, so I think it wasn't until Splatoon 2 that we ended up with a league. There were, so just for context, like the first AUNZ Cup, which was a Splatoon 1 tournament, I think that got 22 teams, somewhere in that span. So way smaller than what would happen in Splatoon 2. I think it's about triple that. Like, not even on the scale of America, but if you actually compare our populations, I think I did the maths. It's like, yeah, we got more players per population if I just only count Australia and not New Zealand's population. It's a higher percentage.
Yeah.
But just cheat a little bit. So obviously trying to set up, we had like maybe one, Blue Ringed Octolings, bro, at the time, very strong. And like there was this sort of perception top 3 teams would sort of bop everyone else. So trying to balance things out there is hard. And we do want to foster a competitive community. So trying to balance the casuals coming in and, putting their foot into competitive versus, how to elevate them, give them the experience they need to learn, but not discourage them from playing the game. That's something that we've always had to think about, balancing both LANs and online events.
The
Oceanic, I mean,
let me be the person to tell you that's a pain to try to do.
Everyone wants different things out of an event, but if you're playing like a single player game like Smash, you can make that decision for yourself. I'm okay with going to a tournament and getting bopped, but if we're trying to get a bunch of casual players, mix them onto a team, and say, "Hey, go for it," then you have different personalities that you can't necessarily account for, and like that's hard. No one has the solution to that. Ultimately you end up with a compromise. It's not the best situation for everyone, but with these, I'm not actively running LANs at the moment, but that's one thing that we have to think about. Like, how do we, what else can we do at the event so that people can have fun? That's not just the tournament. So can they do Salmon Run? Can they do other things? That's something that I'm always thinking about. So like that first event that we held at the convention tournament, I ran a Splatfest. I built a Splatfest voting booth. Got it here.
Right.
You can hit wrote a program you could vote for your teams, and we took your barcode off your convention pass and we logged your votes. So even people who didn't play Splatoon could vote, and that sort of thing. And trying to expand outreach. So like you don't play Splatoon competitively. When we're at these Smash events, it's like, hey, just come watch, that sort of thing.
Right.
And I've diverged completely from the point of this question. But I don't know, that's something that's really important to me, like just thinking about that. So the league was, I think it was Growly, one of the Queensland TOs actually wasn't really active TO at the time, but he really wanted to see this happen. So he put in a lot of effort and encouraged the formation of the league. And he sort of had this sort of window of time before his kid was born that he could work on it. So he put a lot of effort and structured that out. And we broadened the league. Like, we already play with a lot of people in our region. So as I mentioned before, like, so over time, we're pretty much adding countries as people ask. But I sort of think back to the very first Oceanics, we sort of catered it to like 4 hours. We're going to talk about time zones. 4 hours to the east and 4 hours to the west of us. So at our spirit, maybe the league will end up encapsulating that again. Yeah, so I mean, doing the league in Splatoon 2 has been a lot easier than Splatoon 1. So we've had a great set of people doing casting. I'm not super involved in it at the moment, so I'm here for mostly history. That's why I'm like the current state of the league is it's humming along Alecat and Hess, V-Bird, Gazrat, Nikasar. I'm going to forget someone again. It's going to be really bad. But yeah, the league staff, keeping that running pretty smoothly. So, and like the players, we're on our 7th season, so the players know the deal. Like,
I don't know. Shockwave over there looks like he has no idea what's going on.
But I think Shock might be able to talk a bit more about experience as a player, because you've been playing like a long time in the league and advancing, I guess. Or like you've been at the top for a long time, but like in terms of that experience of seeing how it's developed.
Yeah, literally season 1, Div 1, I got put on Bro like maybe a month or 2 before the season happened, or season 1 happened. I think it was mid 2018 after the AUNZ Cup that year. Just got chucked in, got picked up. From there the group Bro kind of got divided almost into like people that wanted to play comp and like casually that were kind of still hanging around, and they still want, if those people that wanted to play comp kind of just messaged around, and I ended up being one of them that got on. And then from there towards the year that kind of off, they had their last tournament in them the next year in, oh no, I think it was in 20, I'm gonna get the dates wrong, aren't I? They had Phantom as one of their last tournaments last year, 2019.
Yep.
And then from there, I've just kind of been just sitting in Div 1 from there pretty much all the way up to Season 7.
Elevated, like playing with good players gives you that good
By the way,
experience,
there is
right?
no DivX down there, just to be clear for those of you that might.
Oh yeah, so we just number our divs are just numbered 1 through to whatever, because often between seasons they change a lot. So like as I mentioned last season, it was 7 divs to this season 4 divs. So the compression and expansion that happens each season, with numbers easy.
I think that's good. Sorry,
you touched on Bro there, and I just want to say, like, for early Splatoon in Australia, Bro was like a clan, and they were really like they were really important to the development of our scene. Like, aside from the fact that they sent players to Worlds, like having such a large group of people who are playing Splatoon together all the time, like there's tons of competitive players who say that they've been through Bro, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that, like, and I don't know, I think it just speaks about like their ability to sort of like actually just include a whole ton of people, and like they didn't always play competitively either, like just having a clan,
Yeah, and
starting out there, and
quickly,
like we don't have a lot of clans in Splatoon.
Not anymore.
Just to quickly touch on that, I think they were probably the first Australian team to ever kind of reach out to the international scene. I think they played in the first few seasons of Ludi, and from there they'd played in other international tournaments, and I think that really helped the first step in kind of reaching the gap between the Western scene, which obviously we'll talk about, I think, a bit later.
Yeah, there were a lot of like individual players, and actually like there were some high level competitive players that didn't engage in Oceanic at all, and like the first time I saw their names, people in the broader international community knew them and was like, oh yeah, that's a killer play, and I'm like, I haven't seen Siki before, or like I don't know about this Scarth guy.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Bro for me was the team that I knew before Australia sent anyone to Worlds. They were kind of like that big, you know. Everyone in the West knew them too. I mean, I probably knew them as well because I actually, when you mentioned Lute, it clicked for me. I was in Division 2 at the same time as them. I was playing for a team called Paradox, which probably nobody has heard of. But it was,
I mean, I remember Paradox.
yeah, you might remember Paradox, but it was a team from way back.
The reason I remember Paradox is because I stalked everyone that was previously on Incopolis Underground. But
Yeah.
go ahead and continue.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean that was a clan. But yeah, I was on Paradox, and I'm not sure if I ever played Blue Ring Doctorlings, but I definitely remember being in Division 2, you know, at the same time as them, and they were kind of, you know, that's where I found out players like Latias, players like Bicky, you know, and they were probably like the first Australian team I kind of knew. I feel like they were kind of the OG Australian team that everybody knew outside of Australia, and it's kind of cool to see how much it's grown since then, because I feel like back then there was one team everyone knew in Australia, and it was Blue Ring Doctorlings. But since then, there's like a lot of not only teams but individuals that everyone knows outside of just Blue Ring Doctorlings plus FLC. I mean, back then you asked who's Australian in Splatoon, they said Blue Ring Doctorlings plus FLC. That's all anyone knew.
And
But,
Toad and
oh yeah.
Yep.
But I think the last thing I probably want to ask about history is going to be towards Shockwave. It's not like ancient history, but I was going to ask about very quickly about kind of Lime Soda's formation, so you know, like the original kind of Worlds roster, and the actual Australian Cup you played in, so kind of your Australian champs. Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe I've been told before that you guys winning that tournament was like actually a massive upset. Like you weren't supposed to, like at the time you weren't considered the best team at all.
Yeah, that was a banger. That was a banger of our
time,
first week for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, obviously for people that don't know, they were up 4-0. Coming into that tournament, they were sweeping everything in Australia. They swept out the series. They beat everyone. I think 5-0 leading up to that Australian Open, including us and obviously everyone else in Div 1. They were just winning every other tournament, and we were just going into like the whole Australian Cup, just thinking if we can just make it to grands, make it to semis, to at least meet each other because we haven't met each other before. It'd be an awesome experience, and then obviously winning 5 in a row after that. Kind of just flipped it on its head, and we hit the ground running pretty much from there. But
Yeah.
back to how we formed. Basically, obviously, I was on Bro mid 2018, as that was kind of starting to die down, like Unravel kind of thing. They kind of formed before I wasn't actually an original member. So 2 players from 2 different teams actually kind of formed. They left their original teams. They like. Obviously, what happens, they obviously start getting better as an individual player. They want to move on, progress further as a competitive player, and start messaging around, form a team kind of thing. So that happened, I think it was August 2018. And then when Bro kind of fell off, they didn't want to play competitively anymore. That kind of happened in December or January of 2018, 2019. And that's when I kind of got a message from Will, or I was kind of already friends with that group of people. /Will, he kind of changed his IGN. Yoshiko, Gio, and Jack. From there, I started playing on some pickups, and then I think I actually joined late January, early February of 2019. Obviously, the Australian Open happened mid-March of that year, 2019. Ends up playing in that. The first qualifier, I have 2 qualifiers. The winner of each one goes to play at Supernova on the stage. The first week we actually pretty poorly. I think we finished like 14th or something like that. And then the next week we ended up just sweeping the whole tournament. I think only dropping a game or 2 from there. And then obviously going to the Australian Open finals, wasn't really expecting just to try and win a few games because they'd basically just been sweeping for the last year, I would say, maybe 3/4 of a year, like 9 months, something like that. And then obviously all that reverse sweep, exciting. I think just after winning 1 game, a quick KO kind of just gave us hope. And even a few games before that, we were like pretty much neck and neck. I think 1 game we lost in overtime. Game 2, I think it might have been. But yeah, it's pretty much that. And then obviously going to Worlds again, we're just going to get completely sleeped by Alliance Rogue, FT Win. GG Boys didn't end up playing against FT Win either. just played against Japan for 4 games, Alliance Rogue 1 game, and FT win 0.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think completing a best of 9 reverse sweep is probably one of the most impressive things I've heard of, being known as the underdog too. Like, I think for completing a best of 5 reverse sweep is impressive. I've only ever done it once. I've been playing for 5 years. Completing a best of 9 reverse sweep is unheard of. I think this is the only instance I've actually heard of it happen and known of it happening.
And
A cool thing, well, not necessarily cool, but Australian Splatoon, our finals, only 2 teams get flown out. So the first year on Splatoon for Wii U, it wasn't a reverse sweep, but it was an instance where Scarface was up 4-2, I think, and Bro actually took that in a really hype comeback as well. And I think they did counterpicking for those maps too. So yeah,
I think that was
so
like,
just because
pre-selected, like a game each, like Bro pick 1, Scarf pick 1 kind of thing.
yeah, it was alternating. It wasn't so yeah, not counterpick. They just picked, and I remember Scarface had like tons and tons of notes, and they went up. I can't remember what the mode was, but they looked at Latias and said, "We would go to Moray Towers, except no." And it was just another instance. People didn't expect Bro to actually win that one because Scarface was like an all-star type lineup.
Right. Yeah.
And they'd won pretty convincingly over Bro in the online. So same thing, like long set, which allowed for an upset. And I don't know. I kind of hope that we get more teams to go to finals if we ever have finals again. But at the same time, having just one set of 9 or whatever games leads to this kind of result. So,
But I mean, like, if you're, as someone who doesn't follow international Splatoon perhaps as closely as I should, I just like get on the Twitter timeline. I'm like, oh yes, there's the Aussie finals that are happening they're happening tonight or whatever. And you tune in like, partway through the set, and it's like all of the sudden, like, things are starting to get flipped on their heads. It's like those are some of the most iconic Australian, New Zealand Splatoon sets, I think, like from an international audience perspective that you can have, right? I can't remember if I watched that. I'm pretty sure I watched part of that Morning Sun Lime Soda match live. And I might have caught some of the other one too. But just remembering, like, you're going into that, you're like, okay, come on. Like, there's one of these teams is clearly the favorite and they should just be able to close it out. But no, for some reason, it just doesn't happen. And those are some of the most iconic sets, I think. Like,
that's what makes esports really exciting, right?
True.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm going to try and push us along now to something on a similar topic, but it is more so just like Oceanic Splatoon right now. So it would probably be a lot shorter. There's a lot less stuff happening now than there has been ever happening. So it's just kind of like the current standings in the Oceanic League. Who's the best team? I think we all know who the current best team is. Who like the best players outside of Solstice, like who are kind of like the up and coming players, the up and coming teams. What are the results looking like? Just anything about like current Oceanic Splatoon that you want to talk about. Any place you want to start, just hop in.
I've been talking way too much, so I think Shock should.
All right.
Okay. Just to quickly mention, some lands kind of at the start of this year before obviously everything happened, pandemic, and kind of 2019 had like Phantom 2020, BAM. I think we're up to 10 or 11. Obviously, PAX as well. In terms of like the series and like up and coming players, I think the Firetail League kind of like really showcased a bunch of players that isn't just Solstice and UST, which was used to be Morning Sun. They kind of rebounded themselves and then disbanded from there. Some players, obviously Latias, kind of just flourishing around also in the Plus server, has been known since back in Splatoon 1. You got some other players kind of slowly creeping up, trying to build some connections kind of thing. Some people like Hazard, Raid 25 has been an absolute underdog from the Firetail League. He came in pretty much as almost, I wouldn't exactly say as a nobody, but from like Div 4, Div 3, and then really brought up the standards, competing with like top Div 1 players. And his team, Brisbane Boom, actually ended up that. Murray is also a good one. He's kind of died down on the competitive side, but I don't know if you would have heard Nine Whole Grains likes to rave about him. He gets to see him play on his gold dynamo roller. There's probably a few more players that I've kind of forgot. I've been doing some pickups with Cozzy, who's kind of like a support midline kind of player. I've been doing some +2 scrims with him. MGJ.
Like all of Atlas.
Also
Like Atlas is a really
yeah.
really good example of a team that like, you know, the players hanging around Div 4 or whatever, and then like really jumping up straight into Div 1 and being able to hold their own. And unfortunately, I think that team is disbanding, but I hope that means that the players are onto bigger and better things. Or, you know.
Yep.
I feel like a massive
And,
star
really
player.
excited for that. Yeah.
Oh, you go ahead, Shockwave.
I was
yeah.
just gonna quickly a bit of a big one, just touching on Phantom and like BAM kind of thing. Phantom this year in March. I think it used to be Gale Force. They kind of played, and Solstice. We ended up also. We used to be called Justice back then. As a sponsorship, we got flown up to Sydney to go play, and ended up going to. I think it was Game 7. So it ended up being a really close set with It was kind of a pickup team. You had Silaris, which I'm pretty sure you're pretty familiar with. Skitter, Bob Ghost, and Cookie. I'm pretty sure. So that was a really cool event. Probably one of the bigger lands that Australia's had. I think it got a little bit of international attention.
One of the more competitive ones as well. Like for all of our lands where I've talked about balancing the casual and competitive, like that was a lot more. Like Phantom's always been a bit more competitively skewed. And I guess like that we would call Phantom a major, whereas the other ones are just meetups or, you know, But yeah, you mentioned Silaris, and she's not playing Splatoon at the moment. She's done like a ton for reaching out beyond AUNZ as well.
She's probably also been one of those people that's kind of put the foot in the door to like almost open the floodgates for other Australian players, really connecting, especially with Europe, because her sleep schedule can kind of get a bit wacky where she sleeps at like 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So the European time slot fitted perfectly for her. But yeah, it kind of fell out after I think Firetail was on my team, the Melbourne Maelstrom.
Yeah.
And from there, kind of, I don't know, kind of maybe just stopped enjoying the game. Valorant, more interesting, like a few Splatoon players have. Yep. Moved on from there. Might come back in Splatoon 3, or if Splatoon 2 magically gets an update, Australasian Open, something like that.
I mean,
she's taking a very definite break, but we all miss that range blaster. Yeah.
with Solaris in the summer, it was like I'd still be awake at like 7 a.m. UK, and I'd be like, I'm really bored, I want to scrim. Can you get me an Australian scrim? And then she'd be awake at like 5 a.m. her time, and be like, okay, I still want to scrim. Can you give me a +2 scrim? So, you know, we'd both be awake, completely ridiculous times for our time zones, you know, trying to play with the other. So, yeah, I think one player that I want to mention quickly, we're talking about Firetail League players. I think I saw, was it on the winning team, Brisbane Boom they won? If I'm not mistaken. And if I'm not wrong, Neru was on the team, the heavy battling player. Yeah, because I remember when I watched, I feel like Neru was always fragging. I don't know why. I don't know much more about the player. I just saw like Neru hard fragging on heavy battling, like so many games, and I think that to me was like a big standout player from the Firetail League. I'd like to see them play in more tournaments. I'd be interested to see if they play in more Western tournaments. So yeah, that for me was like a really big standout player that I saw doing really, really well in that particular tournament.
Yeah, just to quickly touch on Naru, kind of, I think Murray and Naru kind of, obviously you might have heard like I think it was like Maru, Rainbow Checkers ended up calling them, just mix the names together. They really kind of like bounced off each other, like they basically just like a working pair right there, like they could work together and just basically, you could almost call them like a brick wall. Like they said like, let the zombies out, and then they would just be there 24/7, you couldn't get through them. And I think that was definitely a breaking point for both of them. And I think since then, Naru's kind of taken a break. I think she just came back. I think she went on a bit of unofficial hiatus for about 6 weeks or something like that, and has come back and started playing in some scrims the last few weeks. Did see her play into some international pickups or even join a team in long term.
Really awesome player who carried me to Splatfest top 100, so I owe her some thanks.
All right. I think before we move on, the one last thing I want to check. So, if there are people watching that want to be able to catch up on the current Oceanic Splatoon tournaments, what are the tournaments to watch? Like, who's in the current standings? I'm assuming Oceanic's going to be a big one. You know, who's in the current top standings? How do people watch it? Last thing before we move on.
So our league,
Like
everyone schedules their own matches. They're kind of irregular, but keep an eye out for. We'll post sometimes they're posted pretty close to the actual time. But if you're following Oceanic Squids on Twitter, then at the moment it's individual matches from the league, and that's sort of wrapping up now. So it's the last few. On October 31st, November 1st, Australian time, we are going to do another collaboration tournament with the guys from Platinum Cup. So it's called SS Open. You guys are probably a little bit familiar with it.
Open.
That is a global tournament, but the time slot is for Japan, Australia. So please sign up for that. We've split it across 2 days because daylight savings happened, so the start time's a little bit late. But AU Squids get in on that. That's one of the big things that the guys behind that. After we went to Worlds, the Japanese scene really wanted to, reach out to us, but balance. Like it's hard with the language barrier. Like I think we'll talk about this, again. But yeah.
Yeah, I think SS Open's a tournament I've always wanted to enter. I've not done one yet, but it always looks so fun. I might try and enter this time.
It's like that classic. It's like that format of like it's single elimination. You're just going to go up against a Japanese team, and maybe you'll get bodied or whatever. But yeah, and yes, Gabe in the chat has just pointed out that Griffin is hosting an OC birth month tourney, so that's sort of like a pickup with people born in the same month as you.
So that's similar to the Sunday one from a while ago.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
Yeah. I think that's. Oh God, I hope it's not the same dates.
I
We'll
think
figure
it's
that out.
next in the week or two. I have to check. I'm actually in the server. We check for a date.
Anyway,
now.
Yeah, I think when we look for the dates, we can just remember to plug it later, and we'll go back to the plugs. Then we can move on to I think the next segment, which is going to be we're going to be talking about bridging the gap between like Oceanic Splatoon and kind of EUNA, kind of the standard what you think when you think of Western. So I think like what's kind of worked best, like that's already happened to try and bridge the gap, and what do you guys think we like should be done further? Because I think that the Australian community, whenever I watch Firetail, whenever I do pickups, you guys have some really good players. You have so many dedicated staff members that are like put on such a high level of production, and it'd be really cool to kind of like have a higher level of involvement, because right now it's definitely a difficulty with like time zones or internet or whatever. So yeah.
That's it right there. Time zones is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, ping and time zones, they're the big two things. But the fact that we can play Splatoon with people internationally is something that I think a lot of people, well, for me, like that's one thing that attracted me to Splatoon. Because I used to try and play TF2 with people in the States, and you would just get auto-kicked from the server. And if you didn't get auto-kicked, if you found some other server, the gameplay, it was unplayable. And there's very few games, if you think about like competitive gaming, our Australian teams in esports at the moment, there's not many games where you can play from Australia with other parts of the world. So that's one, like the actual game facilitates something that is not possible in many other games. So that's a start. And yeah, we will have to deal with some issues with ping, like I guess that's the stigma that a lot of Australian teams have. Like when we try and enter tournaments. So Japan is the closest region to us, and they are massive. And we did have people like Bro trying to play in tournaments, and they're just so used to having they're also physically close together that there's no reason why they have a high skill level. So they don't need to look beyond their region to find players worth playing against. So it's hard for us to break into that, because not only is there language, there's also just why would they play with people who are just trying to learn from them with a worse networking experience. So
because, of course, as you see the memes on Twitter, people tend to not like playing against opponents that have high ping and are moving around the map,
Yeah.
teleporting back and forth all of the time, as you might be able to anticipate from Twitter.
That's
So-
like one of the things. Like that's our superpowers. Like we play with that. Like that's what. Like for a lot of us, we don't know. Or like when you get higher competitive play, you're like, yes, I need to know where I'm going to aim. But for like a casual player, like it just goes over your head. Like, oh yeah, they kind of glitched a little bit. Like, okay. Yeah. You know, they kind of looked like they were going over the edge, and then I got in a bit of a Twitter spat with Paul. I'm sorry, lag, about this the other day. But yeah, just like literally ping is like there's a barrier. We can't break the speed of light. So yeah.
So
that's a
my-
big problem for us.
my question is right now, in terms of like the current infrastructure in North America and Europe, and obviously we don't like prohibit people from entering tournaments. It's open to anyone, and you know teams will get salty about lag, and maybe there's some lag rules or whatever. But oftentimes it's starting to get ignored because I think at least overall people are kind of being tolerant of lag, at least a lot more so than we have been in the past.
We also owe Black and Spoon a huge thanks for that, because
That's
the
true.
Black and Spoon tournament was just like no time for
Not
like
for you.
like no
You.
and they normalized it, because like that was when speed tests were accelerating in the community of like, how do we know you've got a good internet connection? I guess we'll just speed test you. And Black and Spoon was like, no, that's bullshit. So
the question that I have is, I mean, maybe this can go for Shockwave too. How do you feel about entering, North American, European tournaments, despite the fact that you're coming in with a disadvantage, given the fact that you're, coming in on insanely high ping, and like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about like? Of course, I'm biased. I'm thinking about Inkstorm, when it happened. Like, did you enjoy playing an Inkstorm where I had, or where those like double wave format was happening, where you were able to play and pick one of the times you can either stay up super late or wake up a little early, but it's not like 2 a.m. over the entire morning. So I guess like how has like that experience been as a Australian player?
Yeah, well, I think from just normal rank solo queue, we normally have to get put up against Japanese players. When already you think about that, that's already like a fair distance. So I think to start off with, we're already given a bit of latency and already like used to the game. So then reaching to Europe and North America, it's kind of like just a little bit more. Whereas for when they're playing us, it's kind of like, well, we're like normally contracted to this region within, I don't know, a few hundred kilometers of distance, when for us Japan it's like already like a few thousand kilometers.
It's like 100 or 150 milliseconds ping to Japan. Like it's already a lot. So yeah,
so for I think for Australians, we're already like kind of used to, if something weird kind of happens, like, all right, it happened, at least I like kind of traded out of it, whatever. I think for NA and EU, it's kind of been like, if I get this kill, they shouldn't be able to do anything after, even if it's like 0.1 seconds after, kind of thing. It's kind of just that mentality. And I think the first time I kind of realized that was I think it might have been a season or two ago of Ludi, when we played in a looting seeding tournament. We ended up staying up till 1 or 2 in the morning, and we ended up winning that, and we versed Conton.
Yes, I remember
European
this. The Twitter
team.
drama.
Yeah, and all that Twitter drama, and it just made me and the whole team realize just how bad it is. Like for us, it felt normal. Like we only had like one disconnection in like that whole tournament. And it ended up being the sub who had to fill in because one of our players had to go to bed. And just to say, we ended up winning that game, and we had a disconnect somehow. But I think that was like the first point of realization of there's actually like this big barrier, and I wouldn't exactly say in this kind of bubble, but like when there's a little bit of latency, you might get a little bit annoyed at it. Whereas for us, it's kind of like kind of used to it.
You've seen it before.
Japanese.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've seen it.
The thing that I'm confused about is I feel like most Europeans should be used to it because we play against France. And I don't know, man. I feel like I get consistently more French laggy people than Australian at this point, despite the ping distance. It's just the internet connection. I don't know what's going on over there, but I feel like I'm consistently playing against more laggy French than Australian players. So I don't know why Europeans are complaining about it.
Like I
I
remember
think, like, yeah.
Gray pointed out his he posted his speed test connection, and he's like, "Oh, 40 megabits per second, I can finally stream." Like, hang on, is it like really that bad over in France? Like for us, we finally got like MBN and all that, and we're getting like between, I don't know, whatever you buy, like 50 to 100 kind of thing, and then they're
If
like
you're
over
lucky.
there with like around 40. Yeah,
I think that's one of the things, like, we don't, like, we sort of eventually expect if you're a high-level Splatoon player, you end up internalizing the actual what the game does to resolve things. Like, it's like, oh yeah, if I throw a bomb, it depends on what happens on their on their screen. If I hit them, then, you know, there's a good chance that they're down. It's a whole bunch of information about, like, just the game's logic that you have to work out. That, yeah, it's not like playing on LAN, basically.
Yep.
And yeah, like latency at the best of times will tilt someone. You know, you tried to hit someone and they weren't there. So there's this, like what happened with when you play Conton, like any tournament that an Australian team, or like mixing Australians and internationals, like it just feels like we're unwelcome because naturally, like, we cannot avoid the fact that there's ping. So get blamed for it, and then it's like, well, yeah.
So I think my question would be then, kind of, you know, I guess the last kind of main thing then. Apart from the things that we can't really control, for example, people complaining on Twitter, because we can't make a rule, you can't complain on Twitter afterwards and be salty. People are going to do that, we can't do that.
You can make the rule, but you can't enforce it.
Yeah, we can't, I don't know, we can't get private jets and fly out every Australian to reduce ping. So apart from, you know, those things we can't control, what would you like to see happen in the future to try and make, you know, American and European Splatoon more accessible to Australia? Because I personally would like to see, you know, more of, you know, the talented Australian players, and, you know, like, be able to play in a lot of these European and American tournaments. And obviously, lag's going to be an issue, people complaining is going to be an issue. But apart from that, is there anything in particular, you know, as a player, as an organizer, you guys would like to see change?
I think, like, from an organizer point of view, I think people are coming out with their horror stories in chat right now, but, like, it does actually affect us when people complain about the lag, because, like, it's a conversation that never moves on. Like, it's stuck in one place in time. Like, we cannot fix it. So it is disheartening whenever any AU team makes an accomplishment, and that just hangs over the top of it. But apart from that, like, yeah, just having very, very tawny time slots so that Shock doesn't have to wake up at 2 a.m. all the time. I think what Firetail did. Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just to add on from that, I think little Australian players actually know that some of these tourneys are kind of going on. So I think just getting a few more Australians, like, getting their foot in the door, being able to tell other Australians that this tourney's happening, even if it's like morning 10 o'clock, because that's still easily the time to wake up for on a Saturday or Sunday or something like that.
Yeah.
So just,
we got to
like,
fix
little
our
things
calendar
like
bot on the Oceanic server. We used to have that. And I'll pull in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in the Splatoon competitive feed from Sendo, but then have a bot that converts the time zones or something.
I was going to say, like, Sendu.inc is a great resource for any Australians out there. You know, Sendu's always plugging it, everyone's always plugging it. Sendu.inc is genuinely a great resource. I think whenever I want to know, is there a tournament I can watch this weekend? I'm really bored. I always go Sendu.inc tournament or like calendar. I'm pretty sure it translates automatically to your time zone as well. So if there are any Australians watching that want to try and get more into it, use Sendu.inc.
On the actual website, it does translate. I think if you're looking at the Discord posts from the feed, it just posts the UTC.
Yeah, it's UTC. I've got I will launch the bot sometime this week that if you just react to it, it'll DM you with Australian times or something.
By the way,
do that.
As someone who's on the other side of the coin, as the international organizer here, it's always weird for me because no matter what time I pick for my tournament, I will either get people on the West Coast yelling at me that they have to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, or the unfortunate truth that Japan and Australia, New Zealand has to start the tournament at midnight, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, as I'm continuing to sit here to try to balance these things, perhaps like a little bit of hearing that from you guys, right? Like, I hear the West Coast people very loud and clear a lot of the time. I don't hear from you guys as often. Now, maybe that's just because we're
I think
Twitter at different times of the day. But like from my perspective, it's like, I mean, I'm
early Splatoon
really
1, we kind of made it a faux pas to complain about tournament times because people would come to us and complain about when we ran our tournaments. So like a good number of players were like, oh, that's rude to do. I'm not going to complain about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Kbot, what you're basically saying is Australians need to be more loud on
Let's
Twitter
go.
and start complaining.
A little bit.
Just complain.
a little bit.
All right.
You don't need to like go full out complaining. Like,
All
I
right,
don't
guys.
need a bunch of messages coming from people.
I'm doing it right now.
You heard it here.
What I do
Every
need-
Australian player DM Kbot and complain at him.
What I do need is to hear a little bit more than certain West Coast teams that are trying to play in international tournaments. Like, I want to try to make things as international as possible, but at the end of the day, pick two, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, North America, and Europe. Like, pick two of the three. That's the best you've got.
All right.
Yep.
I think that probably about wraps everything up, if I'm not wrong, from the talking about Oceanic stuff. Unless there's anything, like, for Oceanic, there's still a little bit left attached to the end, but was there anything else, or...
I want to ask Shock a bit about sponsorship with Justice.
Go for it, yeah.
And what that experience was like.
Yeah. So that overall, that was a really good experience being a 17-year-old. It was 20. Trying to think what the date was. It was mid 2019. Maybe early 2019. Got signed there. We got some stuff in. I think all that stuff kind of happened, and then sadly they had to end up disbanding due to COVID. All that early this year. Sponsorships pulling out. Sad to see them go. Really good friends made along the way as well. Still keep in contact with them. Watch some of them stream on obviously a stream team kind of thing. So obviously good friends with them. Got flown out to Phantom as well. Even PAX Oz in 2019, we got to meet up with some of them. I think there was about 8 to 10 of them that were wandering around. So that was a overall really good experience there.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, I think if that's good, then we'll move on to the
boy,
most
here we
important
go.
segment. The most important segment of all. We have Matt's Player of the Week. So I'm pretty happy with my Player of the Week this week. It's
You're always happy about your player of the week.
No, but this week I'm really happy about it. It's not odd, it's not out there. It might be a bit spicy, but it came to me last night. I had no idea who my Player of the Week was going to be, and then a tweet came to me, and it was all sorted. And for that reason, my Player of the Week this week is going to be Chara. For a tweet saying a story in 4 pictures, hashtag born to be above everyone, with with WK Gang losing 3-2 to a Splatling only team, and Urza complaining on Twitter, and Chara throwing the shade. And you know what? I'm not saying I want people genuinely at each other's throats, genuinely hating each other, but a little bit of spicy beef every now and then is what I love to see. I love beef. I don't know about you guys. I don't love actual hate or anything like that. But a little bit of beef and a little bit of shade, considering Nautilus is not broken, is very, very nice to see. I will say, though, however, I want to give props to Urza very quickly. He took it pretty well. He just said, oh, whatever, I'm going to move on past this and I'm going to come back better and beat you all. I like that mentality a lot. I think he took it well. But Chara's my Player of the Week for that.
So, Shockwave, maybe we can go to you here as resident Nautilus expert out of the handful of us. I'm going to go out on a limb and say pressing W, holding down the left stick forward into a Nautilus is probably not the way to go.
Nah, 100% not. Unless you're a backline and you do that with a charger or a ballpoint or something like that, is definitely not the way to go.
So,
DPS is crazy high.
So, like in a rock, paper, scissors team name battle, I think there's only one way that match could probably go.
Yeah.
Just looking at the bracket result, I obviously didn't actually watch the games, but outside of that, you can't just hold down a W key, man.
I'm pretty sure Map 5 was just one off 3 people just dying to Biscuit at the end of the game, so just don't feed Biscuit. Forehead.
Well,
yeah. I'm pretty sure that was how Game 5 was won. It was a Game 5 series, so yeah.
That's what happens when you play against Biscuit sometimes. Sometimes it just pops off.
Viera, shout outs to Chara. Big Player of the Week there. Probably my favourite so far, honestly. I don't know. I mean, who have the other options been? My options was everyone that voted for Turf War, Bursty for taking the Rainmaker right side, and Sendu for locking up Skoze. So yeah, I think I'll take Chara as my favorite player of the week so far. I like this spicy beef.
As a reminder, Matt's player of the week, the disclaimer here, is never actually what you did in the game. It's all about your Twitter game. So if you want to get player of the week, make sure you make a good post that gets Matt laughing.
So just start beefing. Just start beefing. I love a good. It's not even that, because now I really want to see Supernova and W Key Gang play. That's why now. Because like this is what beef starts. It now gets me excited to watch the next time Supernova and W Key Gang play, because I know that something's going to come out of that. If Urza wins, he's going to be chuffed. He is going to be pretty chuffed. So that's what I like about beef. It kind of creates these storylines. It makes it a lot more exciting, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that's probably all we have now, unless there's anything else you guys want to say. I think it's so. Did you want to plug that tournament from before? You weren't sure on the times on. Any other things you need to plug for Oceanic, etc.?
Yep, we'll probably plug. So there were a couple coming up. We've got the Calendar Cup by Griffin, I think, will be held. Shop posted it. It's gone now.
17th of October,
Yep.
7 p.m.
Yep.
Australian Eastern Daylight Time.
Yep. And then we've got SS Open, so that's open to everyone. So if you're staying up late in, I don't know what part of the world, the US, probably staying up late, then sign up for that. Well, we haven't properly announced it yet, but the SS Open Discord, I'll drop an invite in the chat, and you can.
I just did. One step ahead of you.
Thank you. Yeah, just drop in there. That one has the big language barrier where the TO and I only ever speak over Google Translate, so that's fun. But that's also why this tournament keeps happening, because when I took my break from Splatoon, I'm like, this is too hard to explain that I'm on a break from Splatoon, so I guess we'll just do it.
Yeah.
Whenever he messages me, I just have to be like, oh yeah, cool, let's do it.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we'll just go around. Do you have any plugs this week, Kbot? Any tournaments you want to plug coming up? Oh, I will say that next week is the GSM charity event. That's going to be the 10th to the 11th of October at 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 7 p.m. Central European Time. I'm not quite sure how that translates to Australia, but yeah, definitely an event to check out.
Something like that. Yeah, definitely check out. It's actually all in favor. I had the information pulled up, but then I switched off. Ink for Pink is the name of the event. They're raising money actually all week for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So not only, obviously tune in for the tournament itself, but also there's going to be plenty of streams throughout the week. I will actually be on the GSM channel, I believe Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So come on by. If you want my takes, I'll probably be trying to take a stab at tournament predictions, might try to do some analytical VOD reviewy sorts of things. We'll see exactly what it goes. I haven't gotten my whole 3-hour block planned out yet, but definitely be sure to tune in for that again. That's on the GSM Twitch channel at GSM_live. Of course, you can find them on Twitter at GSM_splat. So, and we'll be here the week after that tournament to talk about it.
Yep.
We'll probably be talking about that tournament and hitting it pretty hard. So definitely sign up for that tournament on that weekend. Otherwise, don't think I've got that much else to plug. I mentioned that I have those Turf War VODs up on my YouTube channel, which is rather small. I also have a playlist for Talk Speed Up episodes that are conveniently linked right there as well. So if you missed previous episodes, I'll also be adding this one there whenever Mac gets it uploaded. And other than that, I think that's pretty much it.
I just want to do a big shout out to all the Oceanic organizers. Like mostly I have barely scratched the surface of history here with all the lands that happened, like Gabe running stuff in Perth and everything. So if you want to talk about old war stories, send me a DM sometime. I'll see what I can pull up. But everyone who's been part of this scene, like we're just been like developing. It's not just tournaments. Like we are very much a community as well. So I just want to thank everyone for being a part of it. And see where we're heading next.
Anything before we head off, Shockwave?
Yep.
Any plugs?
No, not really. Just thanks to obviously all the Western team for letting me in and not complaining too much. My channel. Twitter. I think it's like you already put it
below
in.
You,
I stream on Twitch every so often, maybe a couple times a week. Shockwave_SP. And then YouTube is just Shockwave.
Yeah, so make sure to follow all of the lads, of course. You're already on my channel, so I get the fiercest promotion in the world. But yeah, make sure to definitely check out all of these events. SS Open, the GSM Ink for Pink. So yeah, please make sure to check these events out and all of these people out. We're gonna be back with Talk Speed Up in a couple of weeks, but I think until then we're probably heading off for tonight. So yeah, thanks very much, guys, and good night. I will now be leading us away.